Hi there, welcome back to Professor Snyder's, that's me, Music Biz News. I think artists are beginning to feel like the English when they were being pushed off all of the European continent on Dunkirk and having to retreat back to their little island for refuge. Now, of course, in the end, they won, but right now it feels like AI is doing all the pushing and the musicians and the artists are doing the retreating. And I think that this is a plan. I think the AI companies, especially Suno and Udio, planned all along to join with the big three record labels. That is why they made their subscriptions super cheap, from free to $30 a month. And this has led to over 17 million subscribers just to Udio and Suno. And of course, they knew that the record labels are going to look at that number of subscribers and go, we've got to get into this. And it's happening. As you've probably seen, Warner Music Group just signed the same kind of agreement that UMG did with Udio. The CEO of Warner Music Group was right when he said, this space is moving lightning fast. Past lessons teach us that delaying only lets others define our future. The music business learned that during the file sharing era, during Napster, and the film and TV industries are still regretting not embracing streaming sooner. And so the reason it feels like this is Dunkirk is the constant barrage of announcements about AI and the music industry, like Clay. AI platform Clay signs licensing deal with UMG, Warner Music Group, Sony for recorded music and publishing rights. Warner and Udio, just like with Universal Music Group, settle a lawsuit and agree to build new AI music platform. Disney is about to embrace generative AI, and the internet is furious. Warner Music Group and Stability AI join forces to build the next generation of responsible AI tools for music creation. This just in, Warner just partnered with Suno, the first of the big three to partner with Suno. The differences, though, that I can see is that Warner Music Group will allow users to create AI-generated music on Suno using the voices, names, likenesses, images, and compositions of artists who opt into the program. And so it seems like the music is almost an afterthought because they're going to allow them to use the images of Ed Sheeran. I don't know how that's going to work. And while they didn't totally cut off subscriber downloads like UMG did with Udio, they will limit them to only subscribers with paid tiers, and they aren't saying how much those subscriptions will cost. So you can see why artists probably feel a little besieged right now. And we hear a lot of statements from the record label saying how they are very, very concerned about their artists being fairly compensated for their work. But right now, it's very vague on how the artist's going to get their money. According to the Financial Times report from October, labels were advocating for a compensation framework similar to how traditional music streaming works, micropayments based on the number of plays, which hasn't been very good for artists. And everyone from independent artists to Taylor Swift have complained that the streaming era payment system squeezes the people actually making the music, with profits funneling up to the labels instead. And as I quoted in my previous podcast, the major labels licensed their full catalogs to Spotify, but made sure the agreements were on their terms and that they made out just fine no matter what. Spotify paid the majors massive advances with no requirement that any of that money trickled down to their artists. While there are similarities to the license deals with Spotify and other streamers, I think it may be closer to the beat licensing companies like Sound Better Tracks that offered beats, and the license cost determined by use, non-exclusive, exclusive, and buyout being the most expensive. They licensed hand-picked tracks and beats from top industry producers. Find a track you love, write a top line, and release your song, and you can choose the genre and which artist you want to sound like. But it's even more complicated than just counting streams. One can imagine that pricing out earnings for AI-generated remixes could be much more complicated than streaming the original song. Again, who gets paid if a subscriber, just for fun, wants to remix a song? As many of you know, Suno and Udio already have tiered subscriptions based on the use of the song. And here is Suno's. The free level, basic, is for non-commercial use only, and they only get access to older models and limited concurrent jobs. The pro level is $10 a month. Commercial use is allowed, and they get early new features and song stem export and priority queues. And the premier, $30 a month, can be used for commercial use, priority queue, and high volume production. So companies like Warner and UMG will, in a sense, wall off all of their recordings, say like a Warner bucket of records. AI can be trained on the licensed scrapings from the Warner bucket now. This service allows users to create AI-generated remixes, covers, and original songs using Warner's extensive licensed catalog. And subscribers to Udio can ask the Warner Train AI to make music from the Warner bucket now. There may be tiered systems like that are already in place, but there will be limitations on the use and the tiers. If a subscriber just wants to create music for fun, maybe in the free tier, assuming there is one, and it will probably be with ads, then they get the bottom of the bucket scrapings, like maybe the Archies or bands you've never heard of. And at the top level, if a movie producer wants a song in the style and sound maybe of Stevie Nicks, there would be a premier price, with Nicks getting a bigger part maybe of the license paid to Warner. So where do the recording artists come into all this? In a post entitled Growing the Value of Music for Artists and Songwriters by Warner Music's CEO, a critical component of this deal is the opt-in system for artists, ensuring they receive both credit and compensation when their work fuels AI creations. So based on this, Stevie Nicks, in the above scenario, would have to opt in to allow her recordings to be used to train AI in the Warner bucket. But does that also mean each member of Fleetwood Mac would also opt in if somebody wanted to use Dreams? And can artists like the Beatles allow just one record like Meet the Beatles be used but not Abbey Road? Or will subscribers have to pay more if they want their songs to sound more like Abbey Road than Meet the Beatles? So the artist or the estates of dead artists can opt in their recorded music to be used and therefore get a piece of the licensed pie. We just don't know what kind of slice that will be. Popular artists like Swift probably getting a much larger slice. But wait, what about the vast majority of independent artists and their records? There's a third AI company, Clay, that plans to invite independent artists to opt in for licensing. Clay has also made agreements with all the three labels, just like the others, but they also are working to include all independent labels, artists, songwriters, and publishers, not just the big three, Warner, Universal, and Sony. Clay doesn't have the built-in subscriber base that Suno and Udio already have, so they seem to be offering AI-trained indie music that has been scraped to train their AI models. So within Clay's system, fans can mold their musical journeys in new ways while ensuring participating artists and songwriters are properly recognized and rewarded. So it looks like Clay is trying to carve out an area of subscribers that aren't already subscribed to Uno or Suno. My biggest question is, how will the songwriters of the record label's albums be paid? Because the songwriters aren't necessarily the artists. According to Clay's announcement, the publishers of Sony, UMG, and Warner have all agreed, and there's way more publishers than there are the three big ones of Warner, Sony, and Universal Music Group. And just clearing a sample these days to be used in a song can take months because there's multiple writers and publishers. And I also guarantee that the labels are going to make millions. But slowly, powerful stakeholders are warming up to the idea of generative AI because they're starting to envision how they'll get their beaks wet and just how wet their beaks might eventually be. But as for the dry, chapped beaks of powerless copyright stakeholders, small-time artists, writers, and creators concerned that their work will simply be made redundant or irrelevant in this new weird content universe, it's still not at all clear how those beaks benefit from any of this. That's why the artists are probably beginning to feel like the English on the beaches of Dunkirk, trying to get refuge back on that little tiny island. Of course, they did win in the end, so hopefully that we will have the same result. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and everything else. Bye.